Morning and welcome. Sunshine, no rain, no wind, probably tempting fate, but it's really good to see you all here, see familiar faces in this garden. So thank you so much for coming along this morning. When I stood on the steps of Downing Street, just over there 2 months ago, I promised that this government would serve people like you, apprentices, teachers, nurses, small business owners, firefighters, those serving our community and our country every day. I promised that we would get a grip on the problems that we face and that we would be judged by our actions, not by our words. I said before the election, and I say it again really clearly today, growth, and frankly by that I do mean wealth creation, is the number one priority of this Labour government. And that's why in our first few weeks we've set up the National Wealth Fund, because we want every person and every community to benefit. It's why we've unlocked planning decisions, because we're going to build 1.5 million new homes. It's why we set up Great British Energy to create good jobs and cut people's bills. And it's why we ended the national strikes that have crippled our country for years. Because I defy anyone to tell me that you can grow the economy when people can't get to work because the transport system is broken, or can't return to work because they're stuck on an NHS waiting list. We've done more in 7 weeks than the last government did in 7 years. And these are just the first steps towards the change that people voted for, the change that I'm determined to deliver. But before the election, I also gave a warning. I said change would not happen overnight. When there's a deep rot at the heart of a structure, you can't just cover it up. You can't just tinker or rely on quick fixes. You have to overhaul the entire thing, tackle it at root, even if it's harder work and takes more time. Because otherwise, what happens? The rot returns in all the same places, and it spreads worse than before. You know that, I know that, and that's why this project has always been about fixing the foundations of our country. But I have to be honest with you, things are worse than we ever imagined. In the first few weeks, we discovered a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. And before anyone says, oh, this is just performative or playing politics, let's remember the OBR did not know about it. They wrote a letter setting that out. And they didn't know because the last government hid it. And even last Wednesday, just last Wednesday, we found out that thanks to the last government's recklessness, we borrowed almost £5 billion more than the OBR expected in the last 3 months alone. That's not performative, that's fact. But as well as the things that we've discovered, we've also seen shocking scenes across the nation. A mindless minority of thugs who thought that they could get away with causing chaos, smashing up communities and terrifying minorities, vandalising and destroying people's property, even trying to set fire to a building with human beings inside it. And as if that wasn't despicable enough, people displaying swastika tattoos, shouting racist slurs on our streets, Nazi salutes at the cenotaph, the very place we honour those who gave their lives for this country, desecrating their memory under the pretence, and it is a pretence, of legitimate protest. Now they're learning that crime has consequences, that I won't tolerate a breakdown in law and order under any circumstances. And I will not listen to those who exploit grieving families and disrespect local communities. But these riots didn't happen in a vacuum. They exposed the state of our country, revealed a deeply unhealthy society, the cracks in our foundations laid bare, weakened by a decade of division and decline, infected by a spiral of populism which fed off cycles of failure of the last government. Every time they faced a difficult problem, they failed to be honest. They offered the snake oil of populism, which led to more failure, round and round and round, stuck in the rut of the politics of performance. Now, I saw the beginning of that downward spiral firsthand back in 2011, when riots ripped through London and across the country. I was then Director of Public Prosecutions. And when I think back to that time, I see just how far we have fallen. Because responding to those riots was hard. Of course it was. But dealing with the riots this summer was much harder. Back in 2011, I didn't doubt that the courts could do what they needed to do. This time, to be honest with you, I genuinely didn't know. Let me tell you this, every day of that disorder, literally every day, we had to check the precise number of prison places and where those places were to make sure that we could arrest, charge and prosecute people quickly. Not having enough prison places is about as fundamental a failure as you can get. And those people throwing rocks, torching cars, making threats, they didn't just know the system was broken. They were betting on it, gaming it. They thought, they'll never arrest me. And if they do, I won't be prosecuted. And if I am, I won't get much of a sentence. They saw the cracks in our society after 14 years of failure, and they exploited them. That's what we've inherited. Not just an economic black hole, a societal black hole. And that's why we have to take action and do things differently. And part of that is being honest with people about the choices that we face, how tough this will be. And frankly, things will get worse before they get better. I didn't want to release prisoners early. I was chief prosecutor for 5 years. It goes against the grain of everything I've ever done. But to be blunt, if we hadn't taken that difficult decision immediately, we wouldn't have been able to respond to the riots as we did. And if we don't take tough action across the board, we won't be able to fix the foundations of the country as we need. I didn't want to means test the winter fuel payment, but it was a choice that we had to make, a choice to protect the most vulnerable pensioners while doing what is necessary to repair the public finances. Because pensioners also rely on a functioning NHS, good public transport, strong national infrastructure. They want their children to be able to buy homes. They want their grandchildren to get a good education. So we have made that difficult decision to mend the public finances so everyone benefits in the long term, including pensioners. Now that is a difficult trade-off, and there will be more to come. I won't shy away from making unpopular decisions now if it's the right thing for the country in the long term. That's what a government of service means. This shouldn't be a country where people fear walking down their street. their TVs showing cars and buildings being set on fire. This shouldn't be a country where the Prime Minister can't guarantee prison places. This shouldn't be a country where people are paying thousands more on their mortgages or waiting months for hospital appointments they desperately need, where our waters are filled with sewage, where parents worry that their kids won't get the opportunities that they did, where nothing seems to work anymore. So when I talk about the inheritance the last government left us, the £22 billion black hole in our finances, that isn't about a line on a graph. That's about people's lives, your lives. And the Tories are still not being honest. They know their recklessness cost them the election, but they won't accept the cost that they've inflicted on the country. And they won't apologise for what they've cost you. They're just still thinking about themselves. Now, this government won't always be perfect. But I promise you this, you will be at the heart of it, in the forefront of our minds, at the centre of everything that we do. And that's why I wanted to invite you here today, to show that decent, hard-working people who make up the backbone of this country belong here. This is a government for you. A garden and a building that were once used for lockdown parties. Remember the pictures just over there of the wine and the food. Well, this garden and this building are now back in your service. It's not just that the last government relied on easy gimmicks and bad ideas. Those things happened precisely because the government itself lost its focus on the hopes and ambitions of working people. During those recent riots, I made huge asks of the police and of the criminal justice system. People already stretched to the limit. They knew I was making big asks of them, and I'm not going to apologise for it. But let me tell you this, they delivered. They deserve our gratitude. And that's why I went to Southport, to Lambeth, to Belfast, to thank them personally, to shake the hands of the first responders who rose up to the ask I was making of them. They deserve a government that trusts them, supports them, and works with them. That is the sort of government that we will be. One that works with people, not does things to them. One that believes in hard graft, not gimmicks. Honest about the challenges we face, and working tirelessly to fix them. And that is how we will always work. Now, next week, Parliament returns. The business of politics will resume. But it won't be business as usual, because we can't go on like this anymore. Things will have to be done differently. We will do the hard work to root out 14 years of rot, reverse a decade of decline, and fix the foundations. Between now and Christmas, we will carry on as we've started, action, not words. We will introduce legislation and take decisions to protect taxpayers' money, to take on the blockers by accelerating planning to build homes and boost growth. We will forward this autumn to harness the full potential of AI for growth and for the public good. We'll bring rail service into public ownership, putting passengers first. The biggest levelling up of workers' rights in a generation to give people security, dignity and respect at work. And Great British Energy will be owned by the taxpayer, making money for the taxpayer, producing clean energy and creating good jobs. That is our focus for the rest of the year. But I will be honest with you, there is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. we have no other choice given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. And that's why we're cracking down on non-doms. Those who made the mess should have to do their bit to clean it up. And that's why we're strengthening the powers of the water regulator and backing tough fines on the water companies that have let sewage flood our rivers, lakes and seas. But just as when I responded to the riots, I'll have to turn to the country and make big asks of you as well, to accept short-term pain for long-term good, the difficult trade-off for the genuine solution. And I know that after all that you have been through, that is a really big ask and really difficult to hear. That is not the position we should be in. It's not the position I want to be in. But we have to end the politics of the easy answer that solves nothing. But I also know that we can get through this together. Because the riots didn't just betray the sickness, they also revealed the cure, found not in the cynical conflict of populism, but in the coming together of a country. The people who got together the morning after, all around the country, with their brooms, their shovels, their trowels, and cleared up their community. They reminded us who we really are. I felt real pride in those people who cleaned up our streets, rebuilt the walls, repaired the damage. And I couldn't help thinking about the obvious parallels. Because imagine the pride we will feel as a nation when, after the hard work of clearing up the mess is done, we have a country that we have built together, built to last, that belongs to every single one of us, and all of us have a stake in it. Our hard work rewarded a dozen times over, because we'll have an economy that works for everyone. An NHS not just back on its feet, but fit for the future. Streets that everyone feels safe in. No longer dependent on foreign dictators, because we're producing our own clean energy right here. And giving every child, wherever they come from, whatever their background, the chance to go as far as their talents will take them. I won't lose sight of that prize. I won't lose sight of what we were elected to do. And most importantly, I won't lose sight of the people that we were elected to do it for. You. This is our country. Let's fix it together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I've got a number of questions from the media, and I'll start, if I may, with Vicky Young from BBC News. Vicky.
Vicky Young, BBC News. Prime Minister, you say that you want to be open with people, but some will think that you weren't honest during the election campaign about changes to, for example, winter fuel allowance. And many now want to know what the impact of the budget will be. So if you're being honest, can you tell them now what kind of tax rises you're considering?
Well, two or three things Vicky to say about that in the first place. We were being honest about the situation before the election. We set out very clearly what we would be doing with tax rises. I made it clear on numerous occasions that national insurance, VAT and tax would not go up, the triple lock for working people, income tax. And that remains the position. I also set out that our plans were fully funded and fully costed. What I did not expect was a £22 billion black hole. And I know the Tories say that's performative. If it's performative, why didn't the OBR know about it? Look at that figure of £5 billion last week in 3 months. If that's performative, why didn't the OBR know about it? These are basic questions about what we have inherited. As I've just said, I didn't want to have to deal with the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. but we have to fix the NHS. We have to fix our homes, our schools. And pensioners rely on them in the same way as everybody else does. So I'm not going to preempt the budget, but I'm absolutely not going to accept that the inheritance that we have isn't anything other than dire, a £22 billion black hole. And I'll just add to that what I said about the prisons, because I obviously feel very strongly about this. To have to gauge every day of those disorders, when people are trying to burn down hotels, I'm having to look at lists of prison places and where we've got them because of the mess that we were left. That's disgraceful. No Prime Minister should ever be in that position when trying to deal with disorder. That's what we inherited. That's what we will fix. Thank you, Vicky. Anushka, please.
Thank you. Anushka Rastana, ITV News. Prime Minister, you talk about choices, and there are plenty of things you've chosen to spend money on. You've chosen to give bumper pay rises to doctors, higher than for nurses and teachers, and you've chosen to take these benefits off pensioners. Age UK say 2 million will be pushed into hardship as a result. So what do you say to those pensioners who are not well off, who feel that you are choosing to balance the books on their backs?
Well, so far as the winter fuel allowance is concerned, firstly, I would say it's not a particularly well-designed scheme, frankly, and I think everybody would concede that. I do think it's important that we make sure that the support is there for those pensioners who need it most, which is why we're pushing for the pension credit to be taken up and looking at other allowances. But equally, simply allowing national strikes to go on and on and on and not resolving them was costing the country a fortune. You can't build the economy, you can't grow the economy if you haven't got a basic transport system that's working. You can't grow the economy if people can't get back to work because they can't get the operations that they need. And we've got to get the economy going. And so that is why we've made the decisions that we have made. And on the pay review bodies, more broadly, doesn't cover all of the disputes that we've had to deal with. What we know is the last government didn't set a framework for that when they started down the road of the pay review. And they put at least one of them in the cupboard of the buildings over the road and ran away from it. We can't carry on like that. We've got to make difficult choices. Thank you, Anushka. I've got Emily from Channel 4.
Emily with the Channel 4 News. Prime Minister, on prisons, what guarantee can you give to the public that no prisoner who is let out early will go on to harm anyone? Or is the truth that you can't guarantee that and that the early release scheme carries with it an undeniable risk?
Well, look, the first thing is, obviously we've put in place a framework to ensure that we don't release those who create the greatest risk. That's a basic safeguard that we've had to put in. And I'm not pretending for 1 minute this is a decision I want to make. I spent 5 years prosecuting people and putting them in prison. The idea of releasing people who should be in prison because the prisons are too full and we don't have the places goes against everything I've worked for years. But we've got to face facts. They haven't built the prisons, the last government. They've pretended that you could have longer and longer sentences, send more people to prison, at the same time that you could veto or choose not to have a prison built near you. They were false choices, and here we are, without the prison places that we need. So what are the options available to an incoming government? Let the prisons get so overcrowded that we can't arrest people and put them before our courts? Would that have worked in the disorder? I don't think so. I was really clear in my mind that one of the main ways in which we're going to have to deal with the disorder was making sure those who were throwing rocks, setting fire to buildings on a Saturday or Sunday were facing the full face of the law within days. I had to create the conditions for that, because the alternative, you would be putting a question to me saying, how come all these people in disorder didn't even get arrested, have not been put before the courts and can't be sentenced because we haven't got any places? This is not a decision that I wanted to take. It's not a decision that any Prime Minister would want to take. And I can't tell you how shocked I was when I discovered the full extent of what they've done with our prisons. And it's going to take time to fix it. I can't build a prison by Saturday. We will fix it. We've already taken the measures that are necessary to make sure we can get through the disorder. But I shouldn't be sitting in the Cobra room with a list of prison places across the country on a day-by-day basis, trying to work out how we deal with disorder. But that's the position I was put in, and it's frankly not good enough. Thank you, Emily. Beth.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Beth Rigby, Sky News. Prime Minister, you say you want to build trust and be honest with people. You've got off to a bad start with pensioners who voted for you, and then you cut their winter fuel allowance, and it wasn't in your manifesto. You also said in the general election you had no plans to raise taxes beyond what you'd set out in your manifesto. Now you're saying something else. So can you please level with people? Are you going to raise taxes? And are you looking, when you talk about the broader shoulders, are you looking at taxes on working people? Or are you now looking at a range of wealth taxes on shareholders, homeowners, big business? Thank you.
But as I said in the campaign, in relation to working people, income tax, VAT, national insurance, we will not increase tax. I was clear before the election, I'll be clear again after the election. Obviously, the budget is in a number of weeks and the detail will be set out there. But I say again what I said before the election, which is we have to get away from this idea that the only levers that can be pulled are more taxes or more spending. Our number one mission is to grow the economy, to make sure that we are creating the money in the first place. That remains the number one mission. Nothing knocks that mission. And that's why it's really important we have a transport system that works. That's why it's really important we have an NHS capable of getting through the backlog. That's why it's important we have the National Wealth Fund, Great British Energy, that we unlock planning so that we can get on. All of those decisions are decisions we've taken in the first 7 weeks to make sure we get the economy where we need it. But we're going to have to take tough decisions. I did not cater for a £22 billion black hole. And that's because it wasn't on the ABR's books. We were looking at the available, as you were, the available material. But it wasn't there. The OBR didn't know about it. That's why they're conducting a review, is to find out why they didn't know about it. But £22 billion black hole on top of what we knew to be the situation is a problem that I'm not just going to pretend isn't there or that we can easily fix. We're going to have to fix it. We're going to have to fix it quickly because I genuinely do not think that the politics where we simply pretend things can be done that can't be done is working. And we will do it straight away. That's why I call about sort of getting the rot out now. Because if we don't do it, if we paper over it, we know what's going to happen. It's like the damp or whatever. Anybody who's ever decorated a house knows how this works. Pretend it isn't there, paper over it, and guess what? In a year's time, it's 10 times worse. We're not going to do it that way. Thank you, Beth. I'm going to take Andy Bell, if only, so that, where is Andy? Andy, if only, so I could say personally into your face, well, fantastic on your daughter's achievement in the Olympics. Georgia was absolutely brilliant. We were all glued to our sets, and please convey our congratulations to us. I know many people already have. Andy.
Thank you. Well, I wasn't quite expecting that, but thank you very much for that message. Prime Minister, you talk about getting the rot out. Your administration's already been criticised for making a lot of appointments, political appointments, inside the civil service, inside what should be strictly non-political appointments. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a review now by your Commissioner for Ministerial Standards just to set the record straight, to clear the air? Because at the moment, a lot of people are wondering whether you really are getting the rot out in terms of the way public administration works.
Well, look, Andy, most of these allegations and accusations are coming from the very people that dragged our country down in the first place. So you'll forgive me if I take that approach to it. We are going to fix the foundations. We've got to do it at speed, and I'm determined to have the right people in the right places to allow us to get on with that job. I'm enormously aware of how big a task this is and how we have to move at pace. And that's why we're getting the best people into the best jobs. But I'm not really going to take lectures on this from the people who dragged our country so far down in the last few years. Thank you. I've got Kieran from The Guardian.
Thank you, Kieran Stacey from The Guardian. Just on that theme, can you tell us why you've cancelled the appointment of your new National Security Advisor? And can you pledge that there will be an open and transparent process to replace that person?
Yes. Of course, there'll be an open and transparent process. And no, I'm not going to publicly discuss individual appointments. Thank you. Jack from The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Jack Elson from The Sun. You've made clear today your reasoning for giving big pay rises to public sector workers, but now you've shown you're willing to get your chequebook out. do you not risk spending the rest of your premiership playing a game of whack-a-mole with ever-growing union demand? Has decided to reform on your watch.
What can I say in relation to that? It's very, very good. It's a great song. I'm not sure I'm the best place to champion it after the last 20 or 30 minutes. But look, let's see what happens with Oasis. In relation to the pay settlement, look, we were very clear before the election we weren't going to meet the demands of the unions. They were making demands which we did not think could be met, and we haven't met them. We'll take the same tough approach as we go forward in relation to any pay issues. We have to take that approach, and therefore I will be as tough on this as I was before the election, because we have to be tough about it. But I'm not going to pretend that having hospitals that can't operate properly is good for the economy, or having a transport system where people can't get to work is good for the economy. Just sitting it out year after year was costing a huge amount of money. So the government has to get the balance right. But let me be clear, I'm going to be really tough about this with the unions, as I'm being tough with everybody else, because this is part of the work we have to do to get out the rot and start to rebuild our country. Thank you. I've got Chris from The Times.
Thank you, Chris Smythe from The Times. Just to follow up Andy's question about the widespread concern of people with Labour links being appointed to the civil service, was your answer effectively that process doesn't really matter when the task is so urgent? And if you are talking about honesty and service, can you not just explain why you appointed some of these people, why Lord Ali, for example, had a down street pass, what he was doing here? And again, on Bethsy, you said clearly wealth taxes are in the frame. Are you also saying to people that further spending cuts are also being looked at?
Well, let me be clear. I wasn't saying process doesn't matter. I think you and others have heard enough from me over the years to know that process does matter to me. Procedures do matter to me. And I'm absolutely determined to restore honesty and integrity to government, because I think that is core to ensuring that people appreciate that politics can be a force for good. I think one of the reasons people have been disillusioned, disaffected, if you like, in recent years is because they can't see politics as a force for good. So that process and procedure and doing things properly matters to me beyond the fact that it, as it were, should be done properly. I think it's core to politics. So I didn't mean that. And look, if you take Lord Ali, he's a long-term donor and contributor to the Labour Party. He was doing some transition work with us. He had a pass for a short-term time to do that work. The work finished, and he hasn't got a pass. You know, that's the state of affairs. And the second bit of your question, I'm so sorry. Well, look, I mean, try as you might, I'm not going to preempt the Chancellor in relation to the budget. I am indicating there are going to have to be tough choices. Obviously, we made commitments in relation to tax on working people in the election, which we intend to honour. And I frankly don't want to have to take the tough decisions that we're going to have to take, but I'm not going to shy away. I genuinely think one of the problems in politics has been people standing at podium like this, pretending that hard choices don't need to be made, or pretending or knocking things down the road. We've seen, I don't know how much, just knocked down the road, the other side of the election. Get it somewhere else. Don't take the decision. It's what happened with prisons. Decision should have been taken a long time ago. But each month it was just knocked another month, another month, another month, hoping somebody else would pick up the mess. We can't go on like that, so we're going to have to grip it, and I want to grip it early. And that's why I said in my speech, if we have to make unpopular decisions now, in the short term, to make sure the long term we can actually do the change that we want to do. The 5 missions in terms of rebuilding this country are really important to me. But I know I'm not going to be able to do them if I don't clear out the rot first and take those tough decisions. Thank you. I've got Daniel from The Telegraph.
Hello, Daniel Martin from The Telegraph. How can you justify strike agreements with the unions when there's no it doesn't include any agreement to increase productivity? And secondly, on Ukraine, do you believe that Ukraine has the right to use Storm Shadow in Russia?
Let me deal with both aspects of that. Look, we came to settlements on the pay disputes, which I think people would say were fair. The rate, what was asked was not what was given. There was clear negotiation in those discussions. And as I say, we can't pretend that strikes, which would be going on a long time, are doing anything other than holding our country back and costing us a future. There's no neutral cost to this. In relation to Ukraine, as I've said many times, the position of this government is no different to the position of the last government. No new decisions or different decisions have been taken. We have put additional resource in terms of what we're providing, both money commitments and weapons commitments. I'm not pretending the last government wouldn't have done that, by the way, because I genuinely think one of the good things about recent years in relation to Ukraine, and there's not much good that can be said of it, is that there's been a unity in Parliament on that. And as I've said to President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine, we will stand with them for as long as it takes. I'm not going to get into tactical questions about the use of weapons for reasons that I know you'll understand. David from the Mirror.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Dave Boat from the Daily Mirror. Prime Minister, on the subject of hard choices, will safe and legal routes be extended on your watch, and do you think this can play a role in stopping the boats?
Well, so far as stopping the boats is concerned, we have got to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade in the first place, which is why we're setting up the Border Security Command. It's why when we had the European Political Community meeting just 2 weeks after I was elected, and we had 46 European leaders to Blenheim, I discussed with them in some detail how we would work better together to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade in the first place. I'm absolutely clear in my own mind that that's how it will be most effectively done. Just as in the recent riots, I drew on my experience of 2011 in terms of what worked to deal with the riots, so with the gangs that are running this vile trade, drawing on my experience of having taken down terrorism gangs, those that smuggled guns and drugs, I think that the same can be done with those that are running this vile trade. Thank you. And then Lucy from the FT.
Thank you, Lucy Fisher. Prime Minister, you've spoken today about restoring honesty and integrity to government, and in your manifesto you pledged to establish a new independent ethics and integrity commission with its own independent chair. You've been in Downing Street for more than 50 days now. Can you commit to telling us when you're going to launch this commission, and can you confirm today that the chair will have the power to launch their own probes autonomously, and that they will be able to publish independent verdicts from those probes? Thank you.
Well, Lucy, look, that is a commitment that we made. We will stick to it. I don't have a precise date. I do think it's important that it can initiate its own inquiries, if you like, because that has been an inhibitor in the past. So that commitment stands. As soon as we've got a date, I'll give you a date. But I am very keen that it has the ability to start investigations under its own steam, because I think that's one of the bits that's been missing. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.